The year 1929 brought with it the end of the Roaring Twenties and saw the Wall Street crash, which started a worldwide Great Depression. Globally, the influenza epidemic reached a large number of people, killing a total of 200,000 in 1929. Other major events in the same year include the inauguration of Herbert Hoover as President of the United States, the independence of Vatican City, and the arrest of the notorious gangster Al Capone. Meanwhile, on November 20th, 1929, Charles Reed Long was born to James and Nell Long in Jackson, Tennessee, the third child of 6 and the firstborn son of a railroad machinist. Charlie's stories of his childhood in later years were nothing short of a Flannery O'Connor short-form masterpiece, and the very reason for this film.
Oh, you ask Uncle Will. Mama, he's sitting on the porch with Uncle Will in Little Rock, Arkansas, I think it was. and Mama walked by and he said, Will, who is that? And Will said, that's Nell Legg.
Nell Legg.
And he said, I'm gonna marry her. That's what he told me, and he says that for a fact. And then when he introduced himself, she said, and he said, what's your name? And she said, I'm Nell Owens. Mother's mother died giving birth to Mother, and her name was Legg. Her aunt adopted Mother and changed her name to Owens.
And what was the story with Papa? What happened with him as a child?
Well, his brother caught a freight. They used to jump freight trains, and his brother and ride. We used to do it when we were kids. Catch a train and just ride a while and jump off. And he jumped inside this boxcar and never saw him again. And the dad always thinks that killed his mother, said she grieved herself to death over losing that boy. Rain, snow, whatever. I can see him. We just take it. I can remember him taking off, walking down the street. Got off 11 o'clock at night and wondered if somebody had knocked him in the head.
So anyway, who was it that just had the baby? Was it Anna Mae or was it Martha?
You know, I don't remember which one it was.
But you were coming home from the hospital?
Yeah. And old Miss Pyers lived across the street. Miss and Miss Pyers, and they didn't have any kids. And one of the few people in the neighborhood had a car, but they had a car. But when they got out, she come running across and said, oh, Mr. Long, let me see the baby. And Daddy's a practical joker anyway. And he looked at the back seat, there was a doll back there with a blanket. He just grabbed this baby up and she said, oh, Mr. Long, and he just said, catch her, Miss Pyers. And that baby landed and she just fell backwards.
Did she fall?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember. Every Saturday, there was a guy on the road with a mule, a black guy, and pulling a wagon. He said, a day's Saturday, next day's Sunday, buying up coal last year Monday. Yeah. But he used to go, I don't know how Dad, he would, but we always had a gas stove, and I know neighbors in there had wood-burning cook stoves. In other words, if you cooked, you had to put
wood in there.
Wood in it and light it, and there was a chimney up and all that stuff. What a pain. But we always had a gas. and it had an electric refrigerator. And I can remember Barron, a lot of them in the neighborhood used to have refrigerators that weren't electric. You had to have ice delivered. You remember the little, come around and had these big old ice hooks, and they'd bring you a big chunk of ice, put it in your, I don't know how often they had to get that ice.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Boy, I can remember they used to, when they put that old tent up, and they had guys going with a sledgehammer, and they had a stake, they had ropes to pull, to pull it tight, and they'd put this big stake, and so these guys with these sledgehammers would go 1, 2, and the third, pow, 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 pow. Boy, that stake was on the ground.
Benedictine monks came to Cullman, Alabama from Pennsylvania to serve the German-speaking Catholic community in the 1880s. In 1891, they established St. Bernard Abbey and started St. Bernard Preparatory School on the monastery grounds. At St. Bernard Abbey, the monks come together in the Abbey Church at least 5 times a day for worship in common. Their life of prayer and work also includes a great deal of private prayer, meditation, spiritual reading, and a variety of labors such as care of its more than 900 acres of property. St. Bernard's is self-sustaining, growing their own vegetables, raising cattle, pigs, chickens, and horses. In 1944, when Dad was 15, his parents sent him to St. Bernard's School. The impressions made in those 3 formative years as a resident would stay with him for the rest of his life. He reminisces of 13 different priests saying daily Mass in Latin on 13 different altars at the crypt, each morning just prior to sunrise. He himself would help serve Mass as an altar boy every 4 weeks or so. Taught by priests and surrounded by monks, Dad's eyes swell up with tears when he speaks of Brother Joe. He was a holy man, and you could feel the presence of God when he was near. He is responsible for the creation of the Ave Maria Grotto, which is a religious devotional garden walkthrough with miniature replicas of famous Old Testament and Christian buildings of ancient Jerusalem, which draws crowds from all over the country today. Dad also tells of a morning wake-up call coming from a priest who would walk up and down the aisle of the dormitory ringing the bell in his hand. He laughs about a fellow student falling asleep in class one day. The teaching priest took a chalkboard eraser and flung it across the classroom, hitting the boy in the head to wake him up. Your parents sent you to St. Bernard's when you were 14? 15 years old. And did you run away or something like that?
Yeah, I got homesick. Me and old Charles George and hitchhiked back to Jackson.
What happened when you got home?
Charles George stayed. He stayed.
Oh.
He didn't go back. His mother was a single mom, and she just didn't send him back. And Dad said, "Well, you're going back." And anyway, he made arrangements. I went back. Put me on the train.
Got sick. Who were the Whitties?
The Whitties, yeah, and the
W-I-T.
and the Trimbles.
And the Trimbles.
Yeah, well, they were characters. They were always in trouble with the law.
Always in trouble.
Yeah,
with
she
the law.
she came across the street one time and said, "What's wrong? Can I use your phone?" She said, "Yes." And the police force still remember the number, 92. 92. I want you to send a squad car down there at 538 Short Street. The dad said, God, that's my house. What do you get the police down there at my house? But that's where she's calling from. And she said, when they pull up, she said, I want you to, Louise is sick, and I want you to go down there and get Charlie Bear, that's her husband, and he's down so-and-so, so go ahead and bring him up here. And they said, well, Miss Woody, we're not running, this is a police department, we're not running taxi service. She said, we paid enough fines to the police department, you go down there and get Charlie Bear, and you go down there and get him. And they would say, God, it was a three-ring circus. We were all right at this old service station, and at that time, Gilbert was the only one in the car, and everybody said, well, we got to go home, and Gilbert said, well, jump in, I'll take you home. So we all jumped in there, me, Pat Ryan, and Kenneth Stanton. Pat Ryan's dead, Kenneth Stanton's dead, Gilbert's dead, and I'm the little one. And so he just turned south on Royal Street and said, where are you going? We're going to the Hilltop. And we said, we don't want to go to the Hilltop, we need to go home. No, I'm going to show you what was a good time. So boy, this Hilltop was notoriously honky-tonk. It was out in the, I can remember it was out in the country, way out in the country. They had shootings, murders, and everything else down at that place. And so it was rough. The Hilltop it had a reputation. So we got ready to go home, and so we all got in the car, and old Gilbert was not, and this is a true story. He just drove down the highway at 90 miles an hour and turned the lights off, headlights, and you couldn't see where we were going. He was, by the way, Gilbert's an ex-Marine too. And so let's see, was it Kenneth or Pat? Yeah, old Pat Ryan said, hey, Gilbert, stop this car right now. He said, let me out. He said, I'll walk to Jackson. He said, it's crazy. He said, it's not but 18 miles. I'd rather walk than ride. So he said, all right, get out. And so we went a little bit farther, and I forget which one got out first. I think it was Pat, and then Kenneth said, and Gilbert pulled the same thing, 90 miles an hour, and turned the lights on. And there was a bus coming, because we could see the bus, the lights. And either Pat or Kenneth said, Gilbert, take me back to Pat's, and I'll walk back to Jackson with him. I can't take any more of this. This is crazy. So he said, all right, he just made a U-turn in the highway and took him and got him out, and he let him out. And then we took off, and I was still in the car. I don't know why I was still in the car with him. He said, you know, that burns me up. He said, I'll bring him down there and show him a good time. And they pulled this bolting out of the car. And he said, I'm going to turn around and run over both of them and kill them. So he just talked. But he turned around, and they saw him turn around, and they knew he was crazy. So they saw the headlights. He had the headlights up. They saw him turn around. And so they ran across the field and jumped on the other side of a barbed wire fence. And we drove out the fence, and he just yelled out and said, I hope the tigers eat you. Called the station. I want to know what was going on. He didn't get to see Gunsmoke. But we went out there, and I took him on the Indian reservation, and whatever. They got to see a lot of Arizona. They got a kick out of it.
The Korean War was a war between North Korea with military support from China and the Soviet Union and South Korea, backed by personnel from the United Nations, principally the United States. The war began on June 25, 1950, when North Korea invaded South Korea following clashes along the border and insurrections in the South. The war ended unofficially on July 27, 1953, in an armistice. Dad decided to join the Marines in 1951. He was sent to Parris Island for training.
We got on a train in Nashville, Tennessee, and we went all the way down to Parris Island. Then there was a bus that was going to take us over to Parris Island.
Were there a lot of people on the train doing the same thing as you?
Well, we were separate, just Marine recruits. We weren't mixed with civilians at all. When I got on there, that train came down from, I think I had a lot from, some of them from Pennsylvania, but we had this whole coach was nothing but people going to Parris Island. So when he got on there, nobody else was on there with us.
How long was the train ride, Dad?
I don't remember.
Like 4 hours?
Wasn't that long I don't know. I'd have to look at the map from Nashville to Parris Island, South Carolina. It couldn't be that far. Couldn't.
And so when you guys finally get there...
Yeah, he just got to it. Boy, that old black porter came on there and he said, y'all, and that old train stopped, and I never will forget it. I can still remember that it stopped, and I could hear that sing, shh, shh. And that black porter came over and said, y'all had better get this coach cleaned up. Y'all better pick up all this paper stuff. That Marine corporal's going to be on here in a few minutes. He knew that Marine corporal.
And he just worked for the train. He didn't,
Yeah.
And he was like, you better get your act together.
And I said, what is going on? But anyway, and so we just stopped. We got everything cleaned up. We didn't know what was going on. And that Marine corporal walked in there. He just walked down that aisle. He's looking over here. He's looking over here. And we were just looking at him. He just walked down there. I said, what? We just looking at him. There's something mystique about that thing. And he just turned around and said, get off this train. And we just jumped up. We were running into each other. And you wouldn't think they'd have that much power.
How big was he, Dad?
Oh, he wasn't big at all. He was a Marine corporal. And then this old sergeant was standing out there. All right, get over here, get over here, get over here. So we were all scattered, nobody said anything. And he said, that is a bus. And that bus is going to take you from here across that bridge to Parris Island. And he said, I'm going to count to 3. And I pity the last man on that bus, because I'm going to kick his ass from that open door through the solid side. And I said, man, I don't even believe there's the last man on that bus. We just went. But I never will forget, I said, what in the world have I got? What is this?
What have I got myself into?
And that was just the beginning. Then they took us at hygienic ward.
To the where?
They call it hygienic ward.
Oh.
Where they make you take a shower and went through that hell. And it was just, they didn't ease up. But you know what? Halfway through Parris Island, when you went to the, it was all programmed. When you went to rifle range and you started firing weapons and throwing grenades and all that stuff. And then they started building you up. And they had you believe that if you ran into a buzzsaw, it wouldn't cut you. But it was psychological. And so they just started building you up and building you up. And boy, when you graduated, you really thought you could
Do anything. Wow.
They had it all figured out. I had to fix it all wrong.
You did?
Yeah. Well, I thought somebody get us there. Welcome, men, you've chosen the finest. I had it all. Fine organization in the world, and we're going to make Marines out of you. Thank you for joining the Marines.
The Korean War began on June 25, 1950, when some 75,000 soldiers from the North Korean People's Army poured across the 38th parallel, which was the boundary between the Soviet-backed Democratic People's Republic of Korea to the north and the pro-Western Republic of Korea to the south. This invasion was the first military action of the Cold War. By July, American troops had entered the war on South Korea's behalf. As far as American officials were concerned, it was a war against the forces of international communism itself. After some early back and forth across the 38th parallel, the fighting stalled and casualties mounted, with nothing to show for them. Meanwhile, American officials worked anxiously to fashion some sort of armistice with the North Koreans. The alternative, they feared, would be a wider war with Russia and China, or even, as some warned, World War III. Finally, in July 1953, the Korean War came to an end. In all, some 5 million soldiers and civilians lost their lives in what many in the U.S. refer to as the Forgotten War, for the lack of attention it received compared to more well-known conflicts like World War I and II and the Vietnam War. The Korean Peninsula is still divided today.
Well, when I got discharged and in Poland, and I was on a train all the way from California to Jackson, Tennessee. And got off that train, had a seat bag, and I walked 2 blocks to the house.
And your parents didn't know you were coming, right? Who answered the door?
I don't remember. Well, I'm sure Mother did, because Daddy was working. And I got a cab and went down to see him.
Is that the one that you talked about, that whenever you got to the United States, it was like everything went from being...
Yeah, we were out at sea. It's kind of funny. We were out at sea, and I forget, it was 12, 14 days. And we pulled into San Francisco, and they opened, we got off a ship and they had the Marine Corps band there. And when I got off there, it seemed like I'd been in a black and white. I don't know, it's crazy. Maybe your brain does it. But like I'd been in a black and white movies, and everything turned to Technicolor.
That's crazy, Dad.
Yeah. But I can remember that. I said, it's all in Technicolor now.
That's crazy. And then, the other thing, Dad, that I don't think any of us have really asked about too much is, like, how old were you when you met Mom? How did you meet Mom? And all and that. I mean, I know a little bit, but not. How old were you? It was after you got out of the Marines.
Yeah, I don't remember, huh? You know, it was in the 20s, late 20s.
Uh-huh. And then you were in Wichita.
Yeah, Wichita, Kansas.
How'd you wind up in Wichita, Kansas?
Boeing Aircraft ran an ad in the Memphis paper,
Oh.
and I applied for it and got the job. Went to Wichita.
Oh, okay.
They were looking for people all the way in Memphis, you know, ran an ad in the paper. She was a waitress, you know. Russian, I met her there.
What was the name of the restaurant? Do you remember?
Huh?
Do you remember the name of the restaurant?
No.
She just waited on you,
Yeah.
and you thought she was cute?
Yeah.
When we lived on Roosevelt, and Danny snuck out of the house.
Oh, yeah.
And they found him. I'm trying to think where they found him at.
The Methodist church.
A Methodist church.
Yeah, he was in the Sunday school class or something. Looked all over. Anyway, I found him, and I went up there, and he was pulling some ducks. And so he said, "What, Daddy? What?" He said, "I could have kicked his butt." Boy, we were really worried.
We were scared. I remember the whole
But he
neighborhood.
wound up. He just kind of fell into that class. I don't know how he got in that class. He used to be bad about taking off.
Yeah.
He'd just take off.
Just off in his
You
own
couldn't
head.
couldn't turn your back on it. I was afraid you weren't going to make it, that you were going to die. And so I made a promise to God. See, when Carlene and I first got married, I wouldn't kneel down and say a prayer. I just self-conscious about it, you know. She didn't, so I wouldn't do it. But I said, if she is born, and if she doesn't die, don't take her. And I will continue to. I will go back to saying my prayers on my knees like I should. And so, and it's true, and I've held it to this day. Until just lately, and I sit on the side of the bed because I kneel down. I can't hardly get up.
Oh
My
my
old knees
gosh,
give out
God.
over.
That is the sweetest story ever. Wow.
Yeah, that's a true story. Because boy, I was really concerned. I didn't know.
She was in labor for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was in July. You said it was in Arizona, in July 27th.
Dust storm the night you were born, where you couldn't see across the street.
Yeah. So thankfully everything turned out, and that explains why, I've always seen you all the years growing up. I've always seen you before you go to bed. You're on your hands and knees saying your prayers.
You don't make promises like that and not keep them.